And first, before we even get started, I'm Megan McCamey, and I am the president of goBeyondProfit, and we are grateful to our host, Paul Brown, the CEO of Inspire Brands, and frankly to his entire team for their tremendous hospitality in enabling us to gather together in this room, but then also to invite so many others to join us virtually. So Paul, thank you. And I want to thank the entire Inspire team for all that they've done to make today possible. So Inspire Brands is a multi-brand company. They have nearly 32,000 locations of all the brands that you will recognize and love. That's Arby's, Baskin-Robbins, Buffalo Wild Wings, Jimmy John's, Rusty Taco, Sonic, and my personal favorite, Dunkin'. They are favorite brands, but what I think you'll also see this morning is the inspiration or in the intentionality around the leadership and the way that they invest in their people and in their communities. So goBeyondProfit. 3 years ago, we started, like most of the businesses here in the room, a good idea and a lot of determination. We had the vision and the investment of our founder, Rick Jackson, the CEO of Jackson Healthcare, and a tremendous group of committed ambassadors to help us launch. And what started as an aspirational pledge and an invitation to every Georgia business has become an impressive network of more than 1,500 companies across the state of Georgia. We represent every industry, every size of business, and all communities across the state. And each company is finding their unique way to deliver that positive impact in their communities. And they're doing it in their communities across the state, and quite frankly, as I look across this room, across the globe. So since our founding, the expectations for business has changed. Our employees, our customers, our families and friends, they're looking to business with a renewed trust and hope that business might have new insights and new ways to tackle the challenges and the issues that we're facing together. So what does generosity look like now? Well, I'd like to point out a few examples that come straight from the goBeyondProfit champions. They are exceptional companies and their leaders who really show us what practical generosity looks like in our industries. They're companies like Kevin Griner's Gas South. Start with a purpose of fuel for good and be recognized and awarded for the ways that you implement it, but also take time to reconsider, to say, even if we've already been awarded, what can we do better? Can we think about employee care differently? Can we reimagine how we work with our nonprofits so that our impact is always meaningful and isn't just what we've always done? What if it's Creature Comforts Brewing, who said, we have hospitality and some resources, and we're going to invite every business around us, every local business, and together we're going to collectively contribute our resources to tackle the needs that we know are in our community. It's H.J. Russell that teaches us how to truly listen to the needs of the people in our community before we respond, whether it's their Rock the Block, which brings in mental health, workplace development, and all sorts of resources for their communities, or it's the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship that is investing in Black-owned entrepreneurs' businesses to make sure that they thrive. Or it's W&A Engineering, who in the middle of a pandemic set aside budget, expertise, and time to listen to the needs and to meet them. Whether that was because their fellow small businesses couldn't figure out how to access loans to survive, so they figured out how their relationships would help their fellow businesses. Or it was respond to the government, their local government, who said, we need a COVID vaccination and testing site tomorrow. And what better group than an engineer to say, we've got the site, the location, we can make it safe, we can make it happen. This is what corporate generosity looks like. This is when it is in action. So what are we doing here today? We're going to take a minute to pause and recognize this ingenuity, this resourcefulness that is Georgia business, and the 1,500 businesses that have pledged to goBeyondProfit with a first ever announcement and a very special guest. And then we're going to continue the conversation, which will acknowledge that if business has changed, shouldn't corporate generosity evolve as well? What is best practice today? How do we continue to execute on this aspiration? How do we build businesses that are resilient and that continue to make meaningful, long-term, sustained positive impact? So let's get started. And to do so, I'd like to bring up our host, Paul Brown, the CEO of Inspire.
Thank you, Megan. I'd like to welcome everybody today. It's great to be able to get back together in person. We said once we bought a great breakfast brand that it was time to start hosting breakfast meetings. So it was good to be able to have this be one of the first. It's incredible to be part of this organization. And Rick, thank you. Thank you everyone that has allowed us to be part of this organization. Inspire was created just over 3 years ago when Arby's purchased Buffalo Wild Wings. And in those 3.5 years, we've become the second largest restaurant company in the United States. And we believe with that comes a responsibility to make sure that we are being good citizens in the communities we serve and being good citizens, most importantly, to the people that work with us and for our organization. And so with that, it's great to spend time talking about and sharing some of the things that we are doing with that today. I'd also like to appreciate and welcome Governor Kemp for being with us today. He's a very successful entrepreneur. Governor Kemp understands the role that companies can play in doing right by people and communities. And so with that, I'd like to welcome the governor up here, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and I appreciate you and Inspire for having everybody and hosting this morning. And it's certainly an honor for me to be here with you all, and really excited that such great people are giving back like you are to your local communities in our state, and that you're celebrating that and going to have a great conversation today. I know you got a great panel that you're going to be hearing from. And also just want to thank Rick Jackson for having the vision to create goBeyondProfit in the first place. It's a really unique gift to give back to the job creators of Georgia at a no-cost invitation for every business, regardless of your size or what location you are in the state. I saw a good friend of mine, John Williams from Athens, that literally started as a 1 or 2 person business holding an award that he had gotten, and he's grown his company to well over 100 people now. And so really it shows that anyone can give back in any place around the state, and that just has a big impact on our communities as a whole. But all of these things are not possible without a vibrant business environment to have this strong backbone and prosperous communities. And certainly for those people in this room and those attending virtually, you really represent the very best of what we have to offer from a business perspective here in Georgia. And you lead companies, obviously, of all sizes, and you provide vital services and opportunities to our hardworking citizens all across the Peach State. What's more, you choose to go above and beyond, seeking ways to contribute your resources to meet urgent needs, as Megan said, investing in worthy causes and giving back. And we're known for that in the great state of Georgia. And I've certainly witnessed that in my time as a small business owner for over 35 years, mostly in and around the Athens area. But also I've certainly seen that as I've been honored to be serving as governor. And we see it in small towns just like we see it right here in Atlanta. And it affects people in different communities, whether it's a local mom and pop business or a great thriving company like Paul's that I hope will soon be the #1 restaurant company in the United States. But we see the effects of that, and I've certainly seen this myself, especially in the last 18 months, but even before that, over the last 35 years, affecting our food pantries, local sports teams, our schools, youth activities, the arts, and many other things. And I've witnessed an inspiring collaboration among businesses in handling the aftermath of hurricanes in rural Georgia, certainly with Hurricane Michael, which was just a catastrophic, really generational changing event down there for a lot of business people and farmers. We've seen, as was mentioned earlier, people innovating in the middle of a global pandemic. You think back where we were 15 months, 18 months ago, and how really the business community and hardworking people and a lot of nonprofit groups have tried and figured out how to deal with COVID-19. And it is an ever-changing environment, as we all know, with the Delta variant really acting much different than what we've seen early in the pandemic. And that is certainly a testament, I think, to all of us to be able to deal with this. And we've certainly seen it when it comes to ingenuity and helping us find and create PPE right here in our state, stand up COVID response sites, staffing our hospitals, delivering the vaccine locally and globally. And without fanfare or recognition, many of you stepped in and helped your fellow business owners survive, and you've helped your employees and your customers stay safe. And that is something a lot of people don't talk about very much anymore. We did early in the pandemic, but it's certainly something that I will always remember, especially thinking back to the early days of the pandemic. And the reality is that businesses touch and better our lives every day. And sometimes we don't give credit for that enough, I think. People are always, in today's world, quick to criticize, but very slow, I think, a lot of times to congratulate and thank people for giving back. And those strong partnerships with you all's leadership between the employer, the employee, and the community is really the backbone of what I think is the American dream, and is certainly a key ingredient when it comes to our state's success. And I can tell you that my administration will continue to support that environment here in our state and continue to champion policies that really make it easier for you all to expand operations, hire more of our great people, which I know is certainly a challenge right now. I hear that all day, every day, but also to continue to reinvest more in the best state for business. And as governor, I'm going to continue to prioritize supporting businesses and also supporting our strong economy. And because of our efforts, and I say ours, I mean all of us, everybody in this room, people that are listening online today, and many others, we're again the top state in the country for business. We've done that for 8 years in a row, and I think it says a lot about our economy, about our state, and it says a lot about our people. And that's what's the most important part of all of that. It's incredible to think about what we've been through the last 15 to 18 months. And our unemployment rate has now dropped every single month for 15 straight months. Yesterday, we got the news that it dropped from 3.7 to 3.5%, which is incredible because the August jobs report nationally significantly underperformed. Obviously, that wasn't the case in Georgia, and as hard as it's been to hire people, it's amazing that the rate is still dropping. But that was really, I think, great news for us, and we're going to continue to work in that regard. But we've also been able to maintain our AAA bond rating. We cut taxes for hardworking Georgians last year by $140 million, and we've been able to continue to work and incentivize and relocate or expand businesses here in Georgia. We balanced our budget. We avoided really draconian budget cuts, even at the height of the pandemic and the recession. And we restored many of those in the mid-year budget last year, which I never thought we would have been able to do. And we're going to continue to be able to work on many of those efforts again this year because of strong revenues, and continue to support great programs that make our communities great, that make this a great place to do business, and certainly education and educating the workforce along all kind of different things, whether it's higher ed, our technical college system, K through 12, and other programs in K through 12 that are helping prepare the workforce of the future, but also to continue to have strong responses and do what we need to do when it comes to public safety to keep people safe in their communities and their cities across the state, provide good health care. We know that has certainly been a challenge and has been for a long time, but we are making headway on that. But also deal with, some old but more significant issues that we're going to see because of the global pandemic, like mental health issues. And I think you'll see a real focus on that in the General Assembly this year, and that will be a good thing. It's also pretty incredible that in the middle of a global pandemic, we've seen record job growth in our state and investment in the last fiscal year. From July 1st, 2020 to June 30th of this year, the Georgia Department of Economic Development in our office worked to bring $11 billion of new investment to Georgia, which created 32,000 new job announcements in Georgia by our great private sector companies. Both of those are state records for our state. The investment, the $11 billion of investment was a 46% increase, which is incredible. Over 2/3 of the $11 billion of investments were outside of the metro area. And I say that even though I'm standing right in the middle of the metro area, because that is healthy for our state. And I know people in the Atlanta business community understand that it's not just good for us to be dominated by one place in our state. We need to have opportunities in all parts of our state. And we're literally seeing that happen all over the state. And we're really excited about that. And that's just going to make the Atlanta business and environment better as well. Since I became governor, it's been a pretty incredible run, especially considering, again, we've been in the middle of a global pandemic, but we've announced 900 project location projects, which is over $21 billion of new investment in our state and over 70,000 jobs created. And I realize fully it's because of the local state partnership that we have with people like Katie and the Metro Chamber, a lot of our local chamber partnerships and economic developers and local communities partnering with us to provide great packages to incentivize people to grow and expand in Georgia, to bring their business here, bring their global or corporate headquarters here. But I realize that it is you all, the private sector, that are creating and paying for these investments and creating these great jobs. And that is something I know fully well because I've done that in my career and we're still doing that. And we're just, I think, the greatest state in the country to do that. But these are historic numbers that we're very proud of, and we share that success with you all and everyone that's watching online this day, because we're all going to benefit from these capital investments or from, having new citizens in the workforce. So it's a great time for business in our state, despite the challenges that we still face in COVID-19. And we are tackling that head on, working with our hospital CEOs and our medical community for treatments and vaccines and other things that we continue to push and urge people to talk to their doctor about, to continue moving us away from this. Thankfully, just a quick update on COVID, we're seeing our hospitalizations start to drop statewide, many on the coast and in South Georgia down 20-25%. Emory here in the metro Atlanta area was down 20%. Piedmont's and their numbers continue to come down every day. We still have some areas that are fighting hard and dealing with the Delta variant, but I feel like we're on the edge of all those numbers going in the right direction. Our cases have been going down significantly over the last week to 10 days. And so we're moving to a better place, but we got to keep our foot on the gas and continue to educate and talk to people about the vaccines. And I know you all are doing that in your businesses every day, and I appreciate that. I just want to close and say that I'm just so excited that Georgia is recognized as a top place for business, really around the world, not just in the United States. And goBeyondProfit is certainly a perfect example of the business community's commitment to giving something back and making sure that we just don't have a good business environment, but that we also have the best quality of life for people to live, work, and raise their families in our state. And that's the other thing that really excites me about our future. It's not just about a good business environment. It's not just about, having my kids that are 22 to 18 have great opportunities to be able to get a great paying job and stay in Georgia and live, work, and raise their families in the future. But it also is just such a great quality of life state to be in. And I think people all over the country are seeing that more and more every day because of groups like this and Go Beyond and what you're doing to give back and really make an investment not only in your business and in your people, but also in your local community. And that says a lot about you all. And I just, on behalf of the state of Georgia and myself and Marty and the girls, want to thank you for that. Hope you have a great rest of the day. And if we could be of service, I hope you'll let us know. Thank you very much.
All right. And the governor will share with us, you get to be the sneak peek that after today, we will launch the first ever Business Generosity Week in Georgia to recognize the work that each of you all do in your companies and with your people. And for those of you that are in the room and all the goBeyondProfit members, will be sending out ways for you to be able to be a part of celebrating this important week and the important efforts that companies are investing here. And so now we're going to shift to our conversation. And I want to invite to the stage Rick Jackson, the founder of goBeyondProfit, but also in his day job, the founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Jackson Healthcare, which includes 16 healthcare staffing, search, and technology companies. So he will be moderating our panel today. Rick, I'll invite you up to this first seat. I'd also like to now introduce to you Chloe Barcet. So she is the managing director at Accenture, leading the vision and operations in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, which includes just a few 3,000 employees. She serves the community well on Leadership Atlanta, Leadership Georgia, the International Women's Foundation, and on the board of the Executive Leadership Council. Let me also introduce to you Kevin Warren, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at UPS. Kevin has a broad role for UPS that includes all US and international marketing and customer experience, as well as the UPS store and the company's Where2Go subsidiary. Kevin serves as a board member for Georgetown University, the UPS Foundation, and is on the Executive Leadership Council. I also want to welcome back to the stage our host, Paul Brown, who prior to founding Inspire Brands was the CEO of Arby's Restaurant Group and finds time still, after founding this great company, to serve the Atlanta community on the boards of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the Georgia Tech Foundation, and the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. So let's start our conversation. If business has fundamentally changed, shouldn't corporate generosity evolve as well? Where do leading business minds think that companies should make investments in their people, in their communities, inside their business and out? And how will we generate impact for our communities, our bottom line, and exhibit this purpose-led corporate character we're aspiring to? Rick, I leave it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for joining goBeyondProfit to give your time, talent, and treasure to not only your internal people, but especially people in the community, both locally and globally as well, because I know a lot of people do overseas charity as well. So with that, but thank you so much for doing that and being a part of that dream and that mission and purpose. And my experience is that is a very profitable concept for you to do, even though it's counterintuitive that you give away money and time and effort and so forth. And but that's not the reason. I don't think any of us do that, but it just happens to be one of the benefits. So thank you very much for doing that. All right, so I'll start with Paul, and then we'll just come to the right here. Get him warmed up. But basically, let's just start off. First of all, I'll just ask everybody this question. What is when you think about corporate generosity and so forth, can you just share with us what your overall philosophy or key strategies are as it relates to corporate generosity for Inspire?
Well, one of our core values as a company is good citizens, right? And we feel it's very important to be good citizens in the community. We also think about being good citizens to the people that work for us as well, right? And so we broadened that definition beyond community, and actually over the past couple of years, actually even more focused within our own community in addition to other communities. And we just think that it's the right thing for a company to give back in many different ways. And we've really worked hard also with our franchisees, because what's unique about our business model is that while we own and operate 2,300 restaurants, the rest of the 32,000 restaurants are owned and operated by individual franchisees. And they are also very generous in their community. So we try to work with them around how they can direct their efforts in the most productive way, and how we can supplement what they're doing in their own communities with what we are doing at the corporate level, either through fundraising or others. So by marshaling 3,200 franchisees in virtually every community in the United States, we feel that we can magnify our efforts, which is a little bit, again, unique about our business model.
Well, I know the nature of a franchisor is that you have to tell people how to make the food and be consistent and all that kind of stuff. So I was just curious, do you kind of mechanize and help them? I mean, one of the things that we've seen with our small companies is they have the heart, or a lot of companies do have a heart, but they ask the question, but what do I do? Who do I go to and all that? Do you actually help the franchisees to kind of help them to figure out how to do that for themselves?
Yeah, if you can help me figure out how to tell franchisees what to do, then let's talk after this. But it has been a unique journey for us on that. So it started out where there were just a lot of disparate efforts going on in the communities. Franchisees had their own individual projects, and they didn't really knit together into an overall theme. And so it was really hard for us to really talk about with our team members what our causes were and how we marshal those efforts. And so what we did is said, okay, we're going to then pull all this centrally. This was kind of a bit of our first mistake. We're going to pull it all centrally and do fundraisers in the individual restaurants. We'll pull all those funds centrally, and then we will give them to causes that we have determined at the corporate level. And what we saw, not surprisingly, is a lot of the energy in the franchisee base kind of dissipated on that. And so one of the lessons learned is that we need to have them own it. So we've since changed it to where we commit that 50% of everything raised at the individual DMA level, market level, will actually go back into that market. And by doing that, our fundraising efforts went up 60% last year versus the year before. So I think the trick with us is finding ways, again, where it's not just a bunch of 3,200 pet projects out there, which all in their own right are good, but they don't necessarily get the full benefit of pulling it together, but also feeling that the franchisees in the local markets and the team members in those markets feel empowered and control.
Kevin, when you answer a question for UPS, just to remind people, could you kind of give a global footprint of how big and the expansion is of UPS and so forth? I know everybody knows them and all that, but he has 32,000 restaurants. Why don't you kind of give him a sense of
Thank you for that, Rick.
Well, UPS, first of all, it's great to be here and great to be part of this conversation. It's extremely relevant. I'm looking forward to our discussion. So UPS has a very proud history, 114 years old, 540,000 employees worldwide. We will be a $95 billion company this year. So, obviously, huge scale. We operate in 220 countries and territories. So we have a huge scale, but with that comes a huge responsibility. So when we do business in all these communities, we need to contribute to these communities. And we've got the UPS Foundation, which has a long history of philanthropy and has worked with the United Way and other nonprofits. But also our employees they want to be part of it as well. So it's not just about writing a check. We committed to 20 million volunteer hours, and we executed on that. And then most recently, and I know we're going to get into what's happened over the last year and a half, we pledged another 1 million volunteer hours for at-risk communities. And so it's not only just helping the community, it's not only just good corporate responsibilities, but our employees, particularly millennials and our younger employees, they see this as a good part of the value proposition of being employed by UPS. So we see it's good for the community and also good business.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Chloe, you want to tell us about your company's overall philosophy and how y'all address corporate generosity?
Yeah, so our purpose is to operate or to deliver on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. And that permeates everything that we do for our 540,000 employees. So we have a similar size and scale. We operate in a similar number of companies to UPS. And that's meaningful because we use technology for good. And our people care deeply about making an impact for our clients, for the communities that we serve. And so if you think about how do we make an impact, it's with the dollars. So at the start of the pandemic, we decided to donate $100 for each of our employees, $54 million to make a difference globally. And that is just, and as Kevin said, it's just not about the money, but it's about the time, it's about the investment. That investment helps with our employee engagement. It helps with, it's aligned to our values and our purpose.
Well, I'm glad both of y'all brought that up because most of our companies are small. And if you ever worked in a small company, being generous sometimes is writing a check. And I don't have a check. I got to make payroll on Monday. And I imagine your franchisees have the same problem. But that's why we added the time and talent, because there's so many things that you can do to help other people. Home Depot was one of our, the founder was Bernie Marcus, and he talked about that. They, talked about home improvement for people so they would take care of the veterans' spouses while the veterans are overseas and fix their plumbing and so forth like that. So I want to encourage our companies to think about that. Time is just as important, and their donation of their time and the company sponsoring that time and so forth is huge, because that's where the grassroots efforts lead. So I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go back with Chloe here. So obviously things have changed in the last year. So how do you think the things that have changed in the last 15 months with COVID and so forth impacted the priorities of how you execute generously for the company?
Well, I'd say, first of all, we realize the value that we have to place on our employees, and really focus. And it's not just Accenture, but all companies are starting to see the value that we place on our employees is so meaningful. Our people have gone through so much crisis over the last, couple of years. And so it's really helping our employees thrive. It's changing the focus from just shareholder value to really stakeholder value. So one of our focus areas that we really care deeply about is providing 360-degree value. And that's for our clients, but that includes our people. That includes in the community. It's leveraging technology to make a tangible impact for our clients, for the communities that we serve, and really for our people, and in giving them a way to work where they feel valued, where they can thrive, and where they can really contribute to the communities that they live in.
Kevin, you were telling me a little bit earlier about kind of the impact that's happened on UPS in the last 15 months. Maybe you can share that.
Yeah, my goodness. So if I took us all back to March of 2020, when the reality of the pandemic was really in our faces, we did scenario planning. Part of revenue forecast for the company rolls up to marketing. And so I'm coming up with scenarios because we knew GDP was going to go down like this. So normally package volume and GDP are tightly correlated. So we were coming with scenarios. Okay, what are we going to do if volume drops 30, 40, 50%? Well, this thing called e-commerce had the exact opposite effect. And so instead of the volume going like this, it went like this. And we were having holiday peak season volumes in March, April, and May. And normally when we do holiday peak season, we plan for it. We hire a bunch of folks. We didn't have time to do any of that. Oh, by the way, as we recall, it was tough to get hand sanitizers and wipes. We had to actually make the hand sanitizers to protect our drivers and our package handlers. And the reception from our customers, they were so thankful because they recognized, the risk that our drivers were doing as far as really kind of delivering packages. So, that happened. And then we also had, the George Floyd, killing, the whole social unrest happened. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we did a CEO succession plan, the first woman in the 114 years history, Carol Tomei, taking over. So we had a convergence of all these things, and we really said, okay, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Let's kind of take a step back and reflect on our why. We know what. And so we went through and then chose a purpose statement. And the purpose statement was really kind of focused on something that when you kind of hear it, you can say, okay, that's UPS, but also a little bit of aspiration. And where we landed was moving our world forward by delivering what matters. And so, our world, I talked about the 220 countries and territories. We have a responsibility there. Delivering, obviously, we deliver. And then what matters, we left somewhat kind of open because it means, you know, delivering your favorite packages. It means delivering in the communities. It means delivering. We're proud to say we're on track for this year to deliver 1 billion vaccines at 99.9% reliability. And so that really kind of cleared up our focus, and it led to a number of things as to how we were going to invest. Then the final point I'll make, and you know, this is, I think this was really revealing, is the small and medium-sized business segment. Our governor talked about that earlier. That's the most profitable segment that we have in our industry. It was a segment in which we were losing share. So we leaned into these SMBs because they were really affected by this pandemic, particularly the diverse ones. And so we did webinars as to teach them how to kind of understand how to leverage e-commerce. We invested in the different chambers of commerce to kind of help them survive. We donated forgivable loans to different funds. We had special campaigns to really kind of reach out to them to kind of help them. And then fast forward, you know, what ended up happening was that we ended up growing share in SMB. It was the best SMB performance we've ever had in the history of the company. We delivered record profits. And then the shareholder returns, we almost doubled the stock, the price of the stock. So a lot of times we think that there's a trade-off between doing good and moving goods. It's actually symmetry is what we found. I wanted to make sure I delivered that point.
Yeah, to me, businesses are a force for good. Can you guys imagine if UPS went out of business for 2 weeks? A lot of vaccines wouldn't get delivered and so forth like that. So no, you guys are a force for good. I love your purpose statement. It sounds like maybe an ex-Xerox chief marketing person came up with that to me, because that's a little bit more forward thinking and really emotional than some of the 114-year-old purpose statements of UPS. No, I'm not. They're not a criticism. I just think it's a fantastic purpose statement. Paul, how's the
What it did cause us is to realize we had the opportunity to focus even more on our internal community, our team members in our restaurants. Just to put it in perspective, 60% of the team members in our restaurants are 24 aged or below, and over 70% are 30 below, and you know, live in sometimes, you know, their life is sometimes in a little bit of fragile state. And so the other thing to keep in mind, we always have to keep in mind here, is that they all have to go to work every day physically. And so in the height, I'll talk about in the height of it, and then what that's caused us to think about longer term. In the height of it, it really caused the teams and the corporate teams to really connect and understand the challenges that are happening in the restaurants, particularly in the height of it. And that allowed us to raise, a lot of people wanted to raise money. So we started raising funds from the corporate teams to help the teams in the restaurants with things that might be going on, particularly at the height of the crisis around needs at home, et cetera. So financial needs that we pay attention. So it was actually a great connective tissue in a way around culturally. Those of us that are able to work from home or have a corporate kind of career to what is really happening in the restaurants every single day and what's happening in their lives. And that caused us to step back even more and say, okay, longer term, are there more things that we can do to actually change their life and help the lives of those that, you know, the upward mobility of those that are in our restaurants, because so many of them are at that really early stage in their life and their career. And so we've created a formal program called Upward Mobility in our restaurants. And we looked and said that there are things that we can do, whether that individual wants to have upward mobility with us as a career, or in most cases, they're on their way to school. A lot of them are going to school or other things, but there are barriers that they need, whether it be laptops, whether it need certain things that they haven't been able to get. And so we now have scholarship programs that we put in place that are funded in large part by the company. We also have the generosity of our team members, where people can be nominated and for certain things that they need to achieve their goals, whatever those goals might be, personal or professional goals. And we have the mechanism to actually help them, whether it be financially, or a lot of times it's actually with mentor programs as well, around how they can move on to whatever their goals are in their career or personal lives. And that came out of, COVID and us understanding that there's a lot more that we can be doing as an employer for the people that work for us, even if sometimes they're only working for us for 3 to 6 months.
What was amazing to me, like with the UPS delivery, because that's the front part of most customers and so forth like that. But, they're people too, right? I mean, while we were sitting at home, and by the way, your packages had to sit outside for 3 days for my wife. So before we could open them at first, you remember that.
Yes.
You remember all that. But at any rate, so what, just as a quick follow-up to that, both of you said, internal people, which is if your internal people, your associates are not able to take care of themselves, they're not going to be able to take care of your customers. So did the impact change that balance of how much to outside versus inside? What was the impact from your perspective? Because you had to do all the above. You couldn't just do one or the other. But I was just curious, did it change?
So it changed the mix from outside?
Yeah, like if you have X% that all the companies here are understand that they got to take care of their folks. And it's just more than just HR stuff. It's caring about them, what they're doing at home and what they're going through, and their families are sick, and all these things. I mean, all of you have that. So I was just curious if it changed, the priority. If you have X% that's going outside that you're focusing on, did it shift to inside, or did you? What was the impact?
There wasn't a shifting that goes on. It was more additive, right?
Okay.
As I said, our good citizens, we say we want to be good citizens in our communities and to our team members. And we just realized that we could do more on the team member side than we were doing.
Right.
And so really
That's
it
right.
was in addition to.
Yeah. Kevin, what?
Yeah, I think there's an interdependency between inside and outside. I mentioned our purpose statement that sits at the top of our strategy, and then our 3 pillars of our strategy are customer first, people led, innovation driven. So our customers, obviously our people, and then innovation driven is really kind of our shareholders. And then the purpose is, the world, delivering our world. And so these 4 actually work hand in hand. And if our drivers are not taken care of, then obviously we can't take care of our customers. And we're not going to drive shareholder returns. So yeah, we had a huge responsibility. You're right. At that time, we didn't know, there was thinking that the cardboard, you could get COVID from the boxes. It was so much we didn't know.
Right.
So we did have a tremendous responsibility to make sure that if we couldn't get the hand sanitizers, guess what? I mean, we had to make our own. We had to leverage our procurement services to make sure we got PPEs to protect our essential workers. And that really was a crystallization of really the importance of taking care of our people, so we can take care of our customers, so we can take care of our communities and our shareholders.
Chloe, the change or impact, which one you did the most?
I would agree. It was additive, and it just changed how we take care of our people, because we were always focused on taking care of our people, but they would come into the office and they would interact and engage, and we had to change the way we did that. Even volunteerism, we had to change that to a lot of virtual volunteerism. And so with our shift to really focusing on providing 360-degree value, it wasn't just value for our clients, but it was value for our people. It's 360-degree value is, how do you focus on DE&I? Equity for all is such a big, important thing to focus on, especially if you think about here in Georgia. That is such an important purpose. And I believe that if we could all together find ways to imagine a world where all CEOs, and this is why I love goBeyondProfit, could really come together and find a way to deliver and make a positive impact on the community. If we can lock hands, to me, that's the Georgia we would love to be and see. So an example of that is our apprentice program. So we thought about, how do we really bring in more skilled workers at a time where people are struggling in the communities? And so we partnered with Microsoft to deliver digital training, help people that wouldn't normally get access to a company like Accenture get skills to be able to come in. Technology is a great equalizer because we're able to take people in that have 2-year degrees or maybe no degrees, and with some technology training, be able to serve our clients. And what does that do? It creates not only an impact for these people, it creates generational impact.
Right.
And so these are things that we're extremely proud of and love to partner with other companies on.
Kevin had mentioned probably maybe a sleepless night right in March about, you know, what our revenues were going down and so forth. We were in healthcare, and if you recall, that was when they said all surgery stopped for all the hospitals and so forth. Well, that's 60% of revenue of hospitals. Our 90% of our customers were hospitals. We were obviously trying to figure out and game out, well, are they even going to be able to pay us, all those kind of things. But if you don't mind, how did that affect, sorry about this, Paul, I hope I don't offend you, but I was like, man, I'm glad I wasn't in the restaurant business in March. So I was just curious, how did you survive through that and help? That had to be a sleepless night for somebody at Inspire.
Yes, I mean, now I guess I used to work at Hilton, and so I called my previous CEO, Chris Nacetta, and right when it was all going on, and he shared with me what was going on in the hotel industry, and I came out of that call feeling a lot better. But there was just a tremendous amount of uncertainty, clearly, and it just everything went off the cliff very, very fast, and just didn't know what down looked like, and so we did what everybody else did: is shore up the balance sheet and get ready to go. But we did hold our general managers, and obviously there were some staffing changes we had to make at the restaurant level. But what we did is for any of our management and several layers of management in the restaurants, we said we're going to protect not only their salaries, but their bonuses. We're just going to keep paying because we know at some point this is going to come back. And these are the team members that, are ultimately going to be able to get us back where we need to go. And we got a lot of credit, not that we were doing it for that reason, but going out in the field, when I could start going back out in the field, they really, really appreciated it because few others did that.
Right,
and we did it because we felt it was the right thing to do, because so many of these general managers were tenured and been there, and this was not anything that they had any control over. But we also did it because it was the right way to protect the business in the long term.
Yeah. Kevin, you had mentioned your purpose statement. If you don't mind, if you'd restate it, because I haven't totally memorized it yet. It was so good. But and then tell me how that purpose statement was manifested in the way that your corporate citizenship and giving back, generosity, how that impacted you. You talked a little bit about that. But.
Yeah. So the purpose statement again is moving our world forward by delivering what matters. And if you come up with, so there's a lot of thought. Obviously in that statement. But if you come up with even the best purpose statement, then you kind of push it to the side and it's not integrated into your business, then it really won't be that useful. And so, when you hear our CEO, Carol Tomei, on earnings calls, in her script, you hear our purpose statement. When we talk to investors, it starts with our purpose statement. When we have to make key decisions or maybe some tough calls, we go to our purpose statement. So it really is integrated in. And, I will tell you, it's also crystallized some good decisions that we can make that really kind of help our business. So one of the things, and we don't have 33,000 franchisees, but our UPS stores, we have over 5,000. And when we looked at our representation of diverse owners, we knew there was an area of opportunity. So part of what our reaction was in social unrest was to give a 50% discount on the fee for diverse entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. By the way, that's good for us because we can extend our footprint for some very talented entrepreneurs who might not. It was a good investment. It was the right thing to do as well.
That's right. That's right.
So again, we're not seeing that trade-off. We're seeing that, it's 1 + 1 = 3, doing good and moving goods and was good for growth, and good for the community. Those things kind of go hand in hand.
When was the purpose statement public, made public, finalized and made public?
Yeah, I want to say it was about a year ago. It was maybe 13 months ago. We unveiled it to our board in August. And we had a lot of different options, and we landed on that, but we were very purposeful in the wording we chose, and we feel good about it.
How many people in the last 18 months changed their purpose statement? That didn't seem like a priority at the time to execute on. Our current one was, but that's amazing how you guys have responded, and we really appreciate that. Chloe, I think Accenture's got a Future of Work CEO report coming out that is embargoed. Is there anything you can give us a sneak? I know it's not public yet, and we all know how that works, but if there's any tidbits that you could share with us that's coming out on that, we'd appreciate it as far as what's going on there.
We did do a study on the future of work where we surveyed about 9,000 people across 11 countries. And what we found was that employees really are excited and looking for a hybrid environment. Employees are feeling a lot of stress in the environment that they're facing today. 1 in 3 employees are feeling overwhelmed by stress. And so it's really about thinking, how do we change and operate differently? And so it's something we've had to think about doing. I remember when you were talking about March, when the pandemic was when everyone just had to shut down, we have about 400,000 employees that operate outside of the United States in our delivery centers, and they just had to go to remote work. And I was shocked at our ability to make that happen. And it wasn't just our employees, but our clients. Like, our clients worked with us, they cared about our employees, and it was huge. And so as we think about the future of work and the shifts that are happening, and that study is actually public, it's one of the most requested thought leadership pieces that we actually have, because it's more around designing work around people, not just having people do what companies want, but really thinking about how do you help companies thrive, particularly in this environment. I mean, I am thankful for the companies that have frontline workers and employees that have been in the restaurant so that I can eat and I get my packages.
Well, thank you.
But I am thinking also about the employees that just work in offices. And so right now at 25 employees would like to have a hybrid environment. 25 to 75% of the time, they'd like an opportunity to work remotely. So that doesn't mean all the time, that doesn't mean every employee, but where possible, they'd like that opportunity. And I'm hearing that, not just with our people and our clients, but just as I go into different salons or different places, people are afraid to come back to work the way it was.
Paul, you had mentioned about the millennials liking or being attracted to generosity. Since we've been in business for the last 20 years, we'd always ask people in the orientation, why did you actually decide to come to work here? And then 90 days later, we say, what's your positive or negative surprises to see, what's going on. That shifted between 2008 and about 2015 or 16. The number one reason that, and we have 70% women and average age of 32, 35, something like that. But the number one reason now is the corporate generosity, which, to be honest, I would have never bought a tire or done that myself. But you guys have it seems like y'all have developed a recruiting program to try to tap in on how to use generosity in recruiting and retaining top talent. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah, I mean, we do talk a lot about our efforts, and our efforts in the community as part of the recruiting effort is really, really important. I mean, I would go back on the future of work, though. I do think, though, having a team member and employee feel a sense of community with the people that they work with and the people they work for is really important. And in many ways, over the past couple of years, that sense of community has been lost. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing this great resignation, or whatever you want to call it out there, a lot of turnover, is that people have lost the connection with their colleagues and their supervisors. In fact, if you look at engagement survey after engagement survey over time after time, the number one reason people want to be with a company and stay with a company is because of feeling like they like the colleagues that they work with and they like the person that they work for. Compensation is in there, but it's generally lower. And this whole 100% virtual environment has made it very difficult for those connections to happen. And so I think the trick for any employer is, yes, people want more flexibility, but how do you balance the flexibility that people want in their work environment with creating a sense of community or bonds? Otherwise, we could end up with just a highly transactional workforce that is constantly moving from place to place because there are no other bonds there other than the paycheck that comes in and the work that's fed to them at any moment in time. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about that. Now, what a company stands for and what a company does beyond make a profit is a big part of that sense of community as well. But how to create that connective tissue back with the team members in a hybrid or environment is, I think, the biggest challenge that at least I think we face.
Well, I know we could probably just spend an hour on this work from home problems that most everybody has here. I remember, Chloe, that Gallup used to give out when they were focusing on employee engagement. I asked one of them one time at Gallup, the president, I said, if I could only ask one question, what would it be that would say, it would be a common denominator. And the question was, do you have a best friend at work? Mm-hmm. And, and I'm asking questions now as an old fogey, how can you have a best friend at work virtually when you don't see them in the hallway or, go get coffee or, whatever. So it's going to be a challenge. And I think personally, we need to get through this emotion of it and be able to, before we can get a true test of what's going on there. It's going to be a challenge. Well, Paul, I'll start back with you again because you started talking about this and maybe you can give us another ones, but could you tell us on your corporate generosity, what are maybe share an example of something you didn't do so well that you lesson learned, you told about one of them, and then maybe if you could tell us one thing that just knocked it out of the park for you or really meant something to you.
Yeah, I think I went through probably the biggest example of our learning around making sure how do we actually connect the franchisees? Because if you think about the vast majority of the giving that happens as us as a system, we have 600,000 team members that work for either us or our franchisees. So, that's the vast majority. How do you get them excited about giving back to their communities? But again, how do you have it done in a way, right, that ties up to certain themes or certain causes that we think are important? And so, and we've identified an umbrella cause. One of the first things we did is go out there and say, well, let's start with what are all of our franchisees giving to today? And almost everything, I would say 85 to 90% of what they were giving to came under the umbrella of youth empowerment, right? Whether it was childhood hunger or whether it was helping with causes like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, all of it really kind of came under that. So we made that the umbrella for us as a company, is that for our community giving, our primary is under youth empowerment. It also aligns very well with our team member base that I talked about before, where there's such a young team member base that lets us put that under the umbrella as well. And then we picked certain causes that they were passionate about. So our three primary national causes are No Kid Hungry, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Boys and Girls Clubs. And then the junior achievement is also in there as well. And so by laying those out as themes and then allowing franchisees and local markets to have some control over the money that we raise across the fundraisers into those local markets under that umbrella has really allowed us to, I think, magnify, like I've said before, our efforts as an organization.
Kevin, what did you guys do good, not so good? What did you learn?
Well, we really in the middle of kind of a transition. So I mentioned a new CEO. We also have a new president of the UPS Foundation. And so, whenever you have those sort of transitions, it allows you to kind of reflect. Yeah. And we took an inventory as to really our philanthropic approach. And, we're really proud with some of the things we've done over the years, particularly our partnership with United Way. But we also said, okay, let's maybe look at ways in which we can contribute in different ways. So maybe kind of diversify our partners, make sure that our engagement is high as opposed to just writing a check for a dinner fundraiser and just showing up at the fundraiser. So making sure that our employees are kind of connected and look at matches. And then making sure that we have a more measurement as to the returns and we're actually getting what we want, as opposed to kind of doing things just because we've always done them the same way. You know, one of them, I mentioned our customer first, people-led, innovation-driven. On our people-led part, we have a measurement, and that is the likelihood. You mentioned best friend. Our measurement is the likelihood to recommend. Would you recommend somebody, Mr. Kevin Warren, would you recommend somebody to come to work for UPS? And we only had like a 51% recommendation rate. Our goal is the 80. We moved it up to the 60s in 1 year. This whole philanthropic part of the value proposition, particularly with millennials and diverse employees, is really high. So we're listening to that feedback to kind of inform our future direction.
Well, the millennials seem to be more tapped into purpose-driven work, not just live to work, but work to live and to do good, which is good. I mean, it just happened to fit into our philosophy. We got into that. So, Chloe, you want to tell us what you guys, any lessons learned on giving, on what not to do and what to do?
Yeah, so our focus is on economic mobility, equity, sustainability. And so what we learned, what was hard for us is we couldn't do as much in-person volunteering anymore because we were focused on the health of our people. And so we've learned, and as Paul mentioned this whole community engagement, engaging our people has been so important. And so especially around topics that matter. So at the height of the social justice, I'd say awareness, a group came to me and said, can we start a social justice committee? 200 people signed up like within a couple of days. And so it became clear that people want to do good in the community and people want to make an impact. So what we had to do is we had to learn how to shift and pivot to leveraging technology, which is a core strength of ours, and we leverage it more. But what I would say, one thing that we really did that I was proud of, and I just became increasingly proud as we continue to have these conversations, is we hired our first chief health officer ever, Dr. Tam Brownlee, and we hired her in June. And her focus is on the health and well-being of our people and our communities, and what we can do to support both our people and our communities. And it's so important right now, especially with these conversations around the vaccine. So I think that's one thing that we did right for our people and for our communities.
Well, I commend you, Paul, because I know everybody's done this, but asking your customer, which were your employees of your franchise, what they want to give to. Our biggest lesson was that not everybody wants to give to what I want to give to. And so we asked the question, what breaks your heart and how can we help you go solve their problems? So it really makes it more about them. And then there's more broad-based generosity and so forth like that, because everybody has different, I call them spiritual gifts of giving, that, whether it's service or like love languages and giving, I would say. So it's good. Now, Megan, are we, you want to ask another? I've got one more, but I think we're running out of time. So you tell us what you want to do here.
Well, you do have that one question that we really want to get to, but while Rick's asking that question, we will have a minute or two for a question or two from you all. So if you have that, since we're done with this question, just raise your hand and either Patty or I will come over with a microphone so you can ask.
All right, so I'm going to start with Chloe and go the other way. Everybody's going to answer this last question. It's a bonus question. So how do you think the role of the chief executive has evolved in the last few years from your standpoint?
The CEO has the role of the chief equity officer or executive officer. Now is more focused on people because we all said it. I mean, if our people aren't taken care of, they can't take care of our clients. So focus more on our own people, be empathetic, and lead with real humanity, authenticity, engagement of our people. And so I think that is what I'm seeing in terms of just the evolution of how CEOs focus not just on shareholder value, but on stakeholder value, on making a difference, a tangible difference in the community, for people, as well as for clients, not just focusing on delivering value, but focusing on shared values.
Yeah, look, I think Chloe said it well. It used to be more focused on one stakeholder, the shareholder. By the way, that stakeholder is still very, very important.
Right.
But in addition to that stakeholder, there is, communities and people now have even higher trust for corporations than they used to versus other, whether it's the NGOs or the press, or, you can pick some different categories where trust was higher. Now they're really kind of trusting the corporations, and the expectations of the corporations to do the right thing is higher. And so that means, the CEO has to be a good corporate responsible citizen. They have to take diversity, equity, inclusion really, really important, because, by the way, shareholders care about that. So the diversity, not just having a good board, but a diverse board. By the way, I think those two go hand in hand. We feel really good that, over 40% of our board at UPS are women, and over 30% are ethnically diverse. So you've got that aspect of it. Clearly, the employees, you have to be engaged with the employees as well. So it's more complicated. By the way, you do all those things, you do them the right way. The shareholder, firmly believe this, and we're seeing this at UPS, the shareholder is going to be really happy as well.
Paul?
I think in so many ways, I talk about me versus generally the frameworks for the business, and certain things that I would take for granted, you can't take for granted. And so coming into COVID, things worked a certain way. You could count on having your restaurant staffed. You could count on supply chain working. You could count on certain truisms that had always existed. And all that has broken in so many ways, so it changed. So that causes a CEO to do what's sometimes very uncomfortable and kind of step back and challenge what they had their view of their own norms are, either for the business or for the culture, et cetera, and actually get even closer to the team members, be more accessible, listen more, and be open-minded to things that maybe, I didn't think or anyone thought you had to be open-minded to before, right? So just norms were challenged in such a way that I think a CEO has to actually allow his or her norms to be challenged too, and accept the fact that things, you have to manage a company differently now than you did going into it, and that's going to be the way it is going forward. So all the things that were said before me are absolutely true. You can even take that into just the day-to-day operation of a business and getting closer to things. You have to be more agile because, as I tell the team, where we're doing our plans for next year, I can tell you one thing 100% confidently, that whatever we plan for next year will be wrong, right? So we'll plan because we have to plan, but I can guarantee you it's going to be wrong. And so we have to actually manage as a team and be incredibly agile and hands-on in a way that perhaps, quite honestly, a CEO could get away with not being a couple of years ago.
Well, our surveys have certainly, and I suggest you go online about what employees expect of the leadership of a company. And it especially came home in the last 15 months, and empathy was the number one thing. And when you look at in my opinion, what people are hearing more, or the stuff on news and politicians and so forth, and I got to tell you, there's not a lot of empathy going on there. So it's a good opportunity for executive leaders to show empathy, true empathy. And I think with the virtual nature that we had, because all of ours are in the office, we had to double down on understanding and being empathetic and surveying, and how it was very difficult, but I think it was necessary. But it proved that void of empathy, I think, was there. And that's, all of you guys said that, so I'm glad to hear that. Okay, Megan, questions?
Terrific. Beyond my huge respect for goBeyondProfit and Megan, I didn't know what to expect this morning from the panel, but I will tell you, you exceeded that expectation. And to all four of you, I really want to thank you for just having a conversation. I've been feverishly taking notes about good citizenship, leveraging technology, using vision and mission to clear up our focus, which is actually something we've been working on. And a big one is surveying my group. So the question I've got is, while we're not completely on the other end, it seems like every time we approach that finish line, it gets pushed out a little bit. We are in the throes of some major investment. And I'm curious as to what the four of you see, for the future, 12, 18, 24 months, and where you'll be investing, your time, your talent, and your treasure, in your respective businesses.
There it goes.
I mean, technology is clearly an area. It's the reason Inspire was really formed, because we believe that technology was at the forefront of fundamentally changing virtually everything about restaurant industry. And restaurant industry being, one could argue, one of the last big industries that has been yet to be fundamentally transformed. And we knew that each of these individual companies standalone could not make that investment by themselves. So by bringing them together under a portfolio, we can do that. So that has massive implications, obviously, on the types of people that we're hiring in our talent base. In fact, in this building, by the end of next year, over half the people in this building will be either technology or data analytics, which is not what we might expect for a restaurant company. So that has big implications around, bringing in a different kind of talent base, what they care about, right? And how do you recruit them and attract them to come into work for a company like us when we're competing with the Accentures of the world, or the UPSs of the world, or the Googles of the world. And so how do we actually, create an attractive place for them to work, other than giving them free beer and free coffee and
Right. Anybody else?
Go ahead. So similar answer. Digital and e-commerce. E-commerce megatrend has changed our entire industry. As a matter of fact, we predict that 90% of the growth in our industry will be driven by e-commerce. And that has implications on talent, just like Paul said, but also has implications as to how we go to market. So in addition to our very talented direct salespeople, we're going to have to really find ways in which it's not about how we sell, it's about how customers want to buy. And so we're finding more and more, particularly small and medium-sized customers, they want to do business on platforms. They want to do business in marketplaces. And so now, one of the things that's really kind of fueled our growth, that's really kind of driven this S&B performance and shareholder value, is this business we call our digital access program, in which we have our APIs integrated into companies like Shopify, companies like Facebook and Instagram, companies like eBay, companies like stamps.com, so that when these businesses are on these platforms and marketplaces, they can do their demand gen, they can do their checkout, they can do their payments, they can do their fulfillment, delivery, and returns, all in an integrated fashion. And so we really have to kind of continue to raise our digital game and meet these customers where they are, and realizing that, the platforms, particularly the social platforms of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, more and more business is going to be conducted that way. And so we have to, the old Wayne Gretzky quote, we have to skate where the puck is going, and the puck is going in a digital direction.
Well, I love the way, Paul and Kevin talked about technology. And so, I bring it back to our purpose, though. It's really focusing on delivering on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. It's really, how do we enable people to leverage technology to make an impact for their business and for the community? I would just say, especially if you think about the not-for-profits in the Atlanta community, technology has been a real game changer in terms of enabling them to do things differently. And so as I think about the future, it's really leveraging that technology, as you both said, and really enabling people to deliver on that promise of human ingenuity.
Great, thanks. One of the things that's been so impressive is how purpose has really driven all of your organizations through this. And whether it's inspiring smiles through delicious experiences, or moving the world forward, or about technology and human ingenuity, it's really that purpose that kind of drives people. And thinking, going beyond profit, how you guys have created sort of giving and philanthropic engagement programs that focus on segments and sectors that really are meaningful to you. A question that I've got is during the pandemic, before the pandemic, most organizations had causes that were important to them. Rarely would I say, was health one of those things, right? I mean, in this idea of equity in health, not one of those things normally. And then all of a sudden we have this global pandemic where something like global health, which has historically been this sort of esoteric, big, capital G, capital H, global health, what is that? All of a sudden became in our backyard. Global health is right among us. And the health inequities that exist in the United States, in our community here in Georgia, in our city, were exacerbated. And I guess a question I have is leaders in major organizations that touch millions of lives all over the world, how are you guys thinking about prioritization of your own philanthropy and your own engagement from a social perspective, bringing private sector, public sector, and community together as you go into this new world where all of a sudden global health is a priority at a global level very visibly?
Well, I would add to that wellness. And in fact, what we've really been talking a lot about and what it's highlighted is not just physical health, but mental wellness. Just talking to our team members particularly, there are a lot of people that it's just been a very difficult time for everybody, right? And particularly team members that have to deal with all the personal challenges that are happening, but also have to physically come to work. And it just keeps going on and on and on, right? And so we have actually doubled down. We've never really had corporate wellness programs, but starting now, as of right now, we're actually doing a corporate wellness program and extending it to everybody all the way down into the restaurants, right? And investing in that, where we didn't really, to be honest, invest in and even think as much about kind of mental health wellness. So clearly physical health is really important, but I think this has opened up, at least to me, that side that I had, to be honest, back to the challenging frameworks as CEO and thinking about things that maybe I wasn't thinking about as enough before, maybe shame on me. But realizing that's more important than I thought it was.
We've got 3 strategic growth imperatives at UPS. I mentioned SMB, international is the second one. The third one is healthcare. We started a healthcare unit. Timing is everything, I guess, January of 2020. And I mentioned the 1 billion vaccines we're on track to deliver at 99.9% accuracy. It's because we have that technology, we have the cold chain assets to be able to deliver. It's one thing if a pair of socks is late for delivery. It's another thing if some medicine that you really depend on is late as well. So, we're taking our essential status and our corporate responsibility. By the way, it's also good business. It's an $8 billion business. It'll more than double that in the next 10 years. But we also feel like we're doing good, but it's also good business.
The pandemic highlighted how connected we all are. And Paul touched on this. And we talked about this. We hired Dr. Tam Brownlee as our health officer, but it's not just physical health, it's economic health, it's wealth, right? And so when people have a chance to thrive, they can really then make a difference. And so I think it just highlighted how connected we are and how it's important to focus on physical health, mental health, but also economic health. And so that's why one of our key focus areas is just uplifting, people in our community, because we're all dependent on each other. So let's do this together.
All right, I'm going to give everybody back that 5 minutes they want to ask the question here in the room. I want to thank everyone who's joined us virtually. I want to especially, again, Paul, thank you so much for this setting, and Kevin, Chloe, Rick, the conversation, and looking forward to future conversations and working together on this journey to figure out what corporate generosity can and should look like together. So thank you all very much.